Hey everybody, my name is Zakk with Realize the Market, and you're tuned in to the Think Realize the Market podcast. Our goal is to connect with entrepreneurs by providing a platform to help others through their experiences. Today, we're coming to you live with two very special guests, Krystn Macomber and Hayley Watkins, owners of Summit Strategy. So why don't you guys tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do individually?
Sure, I can start. So I'm Krystn Macomber, and I am the co-founder and CEO of Summit Strategy. I've got about almost 20 actually now, years of experience in the proposal development and marketing world, primarily for large global engineering and construction firms across the nation. Started my career over on the DC area, the East Coast, and moved to the Midwest for a good chunk of time, which is where I met Hayley. And now I live out in California on the West Coast. And I've done a variety of different leadership roles throughout my career, built teams from the ground up, built sales processes and pursuit processes, and taught engineers and subject matter experts how to write better proposals and win more work. And I'm very competitive. I have a sports background. I played college basketball. And so I feel like what I do now as a living really gets to use my competitive spirit to help our clients now win business.
That's awesome. I love it. What about you, Hayley?
Yeah, I'm Hayley Watkins. I am the other half of Summit Strategy, Krystn's better half in the business world. We joke that we probably talk to each other as much as we talk to our husbands. But I've been in the industry for 13 years or so now. So I started out really cutting my teeth, helping a large architecture engineering firm win new business with the federal government, which is, for anybody that's done that before, we all have our battle wounds when it comes to those types of proposals and projects. From there, I went to another large architecture, engineering, and construction firm and spent 5 lovely years learning everything about the water infrastructure business, which was incredibly insightful, and learning how much goes into getting clean water out of our tap. So I helped them compete for the second largest water infrastructure project that's currently being constructed in the country, which was exciting. And then I went from there to a technology and business consulting arm of that same business. So I got to see kind of a different side of the business world. I had historically spent a lot of time pursuing federal and municipal and state and local projects, but then at the tech side and business consulting side, I really got to see the private industry and some of the up and coming technology advancements that are helping, move all of our communities forward. And then about 1.5 years ago, Krystn and I had a wild idea that had been simmering for quite some time. Her and I worked together for 10 years before we started Summit Strategy, and we had always talked about, one day we'll go out on our own and we'll do this for a variety of clients, not just the organization that pays our paycheck. And so that time came during COVID. And we realized that we loved the flexibility of working remotely, working from wherever. I've since relocated to Mexico, which is where I live today. And so that is kind of the story of me and how Summit Strategy was born.
Yeah, that's pretty intensive. I love to hear all of that. You guys are absolutely driven by a purpose that's bigger than yourselves. To be involved in so many different areas all the way up to the federal government level is pretty incredible. So yep. What are the most important things that you've learned about business planning? Because you guys have a lot of experience, like I said, from working with businesses all the way to the federal government. So what are some important things that you've learned throughout that process?
I think from my perspective is to have a plan, have a business plan. There's so many companies out there that just kind of wing it. And, as a startup company, there's definitely an element of winging it that you always have to do, and you're flexible and adaptable to how the market shifts and how your product and services are received. But we also work with a lot of clients that are more mature in their market space and still just don't have a business plan. There's no roadmap for the next 365 days of what they need to execute and who they're pursuing in terms of target clients and opportunities. And So I think that's first and foremost, is to just have a plan, and it does not have to be this big, huge, elaborate document that's hundreds and hundreds of pages, because Hayley and I have definitely worked at organizations that had that too. So I think it's definitely just more simple, to the point, again, our roadmap for the next 365 days.
And I think we've both been able to see over the course of the last year, the difference between when we were helping the organizations we were working for business plan, which were large billion-dollar organizations. You had a lot of data, you had a lot of people to rally and get behind. But then we've also seen it from just our small business side, and how important it is to business plan. When we created our 2021 plan, it was just Krystn and myself, and what were we going to try to accomplish this year? And I think recognizing that there's an element of being flexible and kind of rolling with the punches as a small business, and going after things that maybe necessarily weren't in your plan, but that they make sense for your business today, because our business today is completely different than it was January 2022.
Right. Absolutely. I totally agree. And even, the one thing, most businesses kind of fall short of is, whether they're growing or whether they're just starting, we always have to adapt, right? We have to pivot, and we have to adapt, right? And whenever we don't have the laid out business plan, sometimes we'll pivot and adapt and not stay true to that course of direction. And that direction is important, right? Now, everything, as you go through the business plan 1, 2, 3, right? It's not always going to be as perfect as that, but as long as you stay course of your main objectives and what you're trying to accomplish. And sometimes, most businesses will aim at multiple objectives and fall short of accomplishing one of those objectives, just because there's too much on the plate, right? And one of the biggest things that we love recommending to our clients is focus on one thing, right? Really focus on one thing. And for bigger clients too, focusing on multiple things is great. But at that point, you would look at what all you've tested, and then dive into those maybe one or top 2 things that work the most, and start to scale those. So I love that. I love that the business plan. It's just something that's really important. It helps that pivotal moment whenever it comes to adaptation. It's okay.
All right. So yeah, we'll just dive right back into this. I think the last place we left off, we were discussing the importance of business planning, and I would love to get y'all's opinion on that topic a little bit further. But speaking in terms of a small business owner, what would your opinions be on the best place to start whenever it comes time to preparing a business plan?
Great question. So just actually this year, we've started to implement the EOS traction system into Summit Strategy. Don't know if you guys have ever heard of it, but it's a class that we took through WeBank, which is what the organization that certifies women-owned businesses. And it's really provided us with a roadmap of, we know how to business plan. We've done it for billion-dollar organizations, but it provides us a roadmap, not just for business planning, but also on a quarterly basis, because that's really where we see organizations fall flat in the business planning process. Is you spend, a week with your leadership team coming together in November and really planning how to make the next year great. And then it turns January, and before you know it, it's April, and nobody's ever looked back at your business plan. And so the EOS traction system really breaks down your year into quarters, which is perfect for businesses, and allows you to create your plan, which they call the Vision Traction Organizer, for the year, for the next 3 years, for the next 10 years, and then align all of your activities for the entire year towards those goals.
That's pretty cool. So I think one thing that's similar, as far as what we do here at Realize the Market, is we work with a lot of larger scale brands as well, and we get to take the tactics and the plans that we implement into these Fortune 500 companies and bring them down to a level of small business. And it sounds like you guys are bringing that same level of experience along with you. And I would say that's a major benefit of considering outsourcing a professional to help them implement and build their business plan. What are your thoughts on that? And are there any other upsides to outsourcing something like that?
I think the biggest upside to outsourcing it is just to have a fresh perspective. and we've all seen it when we work at an organization, you get very close to it and it's hard to kind of take a step back because you're in it day to day. So I think really bringing in an expert allows you to get a fresh perspective and help drive you to things that you may not have thought about. And so that's something that we're lucky enough to do for many of our clients, and just serve as that sounding board and help guide and advise and push and kind of get people out of their comfort zone. Because I think that's the biggest thing with the business plan. You've got to have a little bit of realism in there, because you obviously want to meet your business plan goals and objectives, but you also need to have some of that really scary like growth goals and tactics. And sometimes I think that's hard to do when you're so in it. So bringing in an outsider like us is helpful to kind of push you outside your boundaries a little bit.
Yeah. And, gives you that time to focus more on the day-to-day work too. And also your team, team is one of the biggest things, right? Bringing in outside help really allows you to, dive in on a microscopic level on how your team can be, at the best of their abilities, making sure they have all the tools and resources. So that outside help really helps for us to dive in and for other clients to dive in on what they want to focus on more, right? Instead of, having to focus in on marketing or focus in on content creation or whatever it may be, they can focus on their one thing, whether that's improving their brand or, coming up with a new product or hiring new people, whatever it may be, that they need to focus on. It really takes one of their hats off and allows them to kind of get a breath of fresh air.
Yeah. So on that note of branding, we could talk about that a little bit. How important do you guys think it is to create a strong identity for the company that you're building?
Very important. I have this analogy that I don't know where I even picked it up from. I think I just dreamt it one night and now I say it all the time, that our business brands are like the front door to your business. Like very few times are people now like going in and walking into businesses and purchasing whatever they want, right? We're all going online, we're going to social media, and we're looking for things that feel like us and brands that feel like us. And so we really harp on our clients that, your brand is more than just your logo and it's more than just your website, but it's how you communicate about yourself. It's your brand voice and your brand tone. And so we walk our clients through a pretty, rigorous process on helping them identify those elements so that anywhere a potential client or anywhere your audience interacts with you, whether it's your website or LinkedIn or Instagram or a conference, it's the same, atmosphere, and it's the same branding and feeling that they get regardless of where they've come and find you at.
How do you guys motivate people to think outside of the box whenever it comes time to building a brand identity?
I think a lot of it is just in the questions you ask. So I've always said this for my 20+ year career now at this point. It's like a lot of what I do is just ask the right questions, right? To help get people thinking and brainstorming and create that kind of safe space for people to feel comfortable coming up with big ideas that maybe no one had thought of before. So I think a lot of it is just in how you structure discussions and create that space for people to really think differently, and then just really pushing them. Like I don't ever accept an answer that someone says like, oh, well, it's just because it's always been done that way, or we just do that because we have for 20 years, and that's one of the things that I think we've built Summit Strategy around, is challenging the status quo and just really pushing people to think outside the box.
How important would you say thinking outside the box is for Summit Strategy as a company?
Very.
I'd say it's very important. We come from the architecture, engineering, and construction world historically, although we serve a variety of industries now. And that industry specifically is usually very slow to adopt new trends. They're slow to kind of come into the world and technology and everywhere that we are today. And along with that, a lot of their proposal and their marketing efforts are also, dated. Sometimes they feel like they're from 2005, not 2022. And so when we started Summit Strategy, we really set out to be a fresh, fun, really creative and strategic agency that can not only help these businesses win work and stand out from the masses of other, civil engineering firms out there, because there's hundreds of thousands of them, right? But then also look at creative ways to leverage marketing in an industry that historically hasn't leveraged the modern day marketing trends that we have.
Yeah, I love that. So in terms of, leveraging refreshed marketing tactics that are, more in tune with the times right now, what do you think is the most important aspect of website development, or, the design of your website to kind of help separate your brand identity, or maybe make you a little bit more unique than some competitors in the industry?
I think one way to do it, and this is I can't take credit for it, it's our marketing director who has instilled this in our brains, is just to humanize brands and humanize the company overall. I think there's a lot of websites, especially when we start talking about that are just very, I don't know, formal and fluffy, and they don't really kind of get to the point of what that company does and what problems they're solving and who's behind that company. So I think really making sure that you're telling the story of how you're helping your clients and how you help the industry in ways that no one else does, but also who are the faces behind the company and behind the logo, and how are you making an impact for those around you and those you work with and those who hire you. I think there's a lot of missed opportunity on a lot of websites that could be done better, I think.
I love that you touched on humanizing the experience. That's something that we focus on a lot of, as well as creating personal customer experiences. I think personalizing your customers' journeys with your company is one surefire way to provide a very unique experience that's going to be extremely hard to find elsewhere. Could you guys give us some examples of some great ways that you can personalize customer experiences?
Yeah, I think there's one way. I mean, and we're in the process of building out a couple big websites now, so I may have a different answer later. But I think one way is just to think about it holistically, because users and potential customers that may visit your website are also going to look you up on LinkedIn. They're going to look at your leadership's profiles on LinkedIn. They may look at your Instagram, whatever. So I think just making sure that all those things tie together in terms of your messaging. I think there's a lot of missed opportunities with a lot of companies because they're one person on Instagram or one person on LinkedIn and then one person on their website, and it doesn't always feel cohesive. So I don't know if that really answered your question, but that was one thing that we've been talking about a lot lately. It's how to connect all the dots digitally, at least.
That definitely did. Okay, cool. So, all right. So what do you guys, what would you consider the most critical factors whenever it comes to developing a marketing strategy?
Understanding who you're talking to, understanding your audience is number one. And really that goes back to part of your business planning exercise as well, is who are our targets? Who are our ideal clients? What do our decision makers look like? What do they look for when they're, looking to work with a firm or work with a company that provides our services? And really getting down to kind of that audience persona level of how do they procure? How do they purchase? How do they buy? What are they looking for on our website? How can we serve up that content so that it's easy for them to really go through and be like, okay, this company has what we need. This company has what we need, to get us to the point of being able to propose for a project, right? I mean, that's another thing that really just sets Summit Strategy apart. Is we always say we don't do marketing just for the sake of doing marketing. We can make you a really snazzy website. It'll look great. But it's not going to be effective if we don't understand your strategy and where you're taking your business. And so everything that we do when it comes to digital marketing and your marketing plan is identifying what new projects or what new business you want to win in the next year. And then how can we use the digital marketing levers and tools to help you get there?
Yeah, I love that. It's incredibly important to understand your buyer's persona from, from the very beginning, as early on as you can. I think it really does help set the pace and the tone of everything following after it, such as your website structure, your marketing copy, the tone of your voice. All of that's really, really important, and it starts with being able to identify your buyer persona. So, I love that.
Yeah, I
What's the
think
biggest challenge that you guys face when it does come to digital marketing?
Oh,
I think one thing which I was going to hit on a second ago, which also applies, I think, is just integrating your marketing efforts with your sales efforts. And again, it goes back to my point earlier about who you are and the persona that you're putting out there on the different channels has to align. And I see a lot of firms, especially now that we're a year and a half into business, I see a lot of firms that they have great marketing. So they've got a great website, they've got social presence, they're doing all the right things there. And then when we start talking about the sales piece of the pie, they're getting in front of clients, they have a presentation, a pitch deck, whatever, and it's terrible, right? It's death by PowerPoint, it's bullets all over the place, it's just completely awful. And so I think like you're showing one side of your business and how great you are on the marketing side. And then when you're trying to close deals, which is when it really truly matters, or write proposals or give presentations, whatever, and you're just not connecting those dots. So I think that's a struggle and that's a challenge because marketing and sales has such a divide and such a like he said, she said kind of culture. And like we're always looking at marketing versus sales instead of marketing and sales. So I think that's one thing that we strive to do is to integrate the two. And that's why we have two sides of our business where we have the marketing side and then the sales side, and we merge those two as much as we can whenever we can, because it's so important.
What are some ways that you guys do integrate marketing and sales teams? Because from our experience, that's absolutely a very common problem, is that there's not enough proper communication happening between sales and marketing. And like you said, sales proposals just aren't up to par with what the website might look like or what the marketing team is doing. It's clear that there's miscommunication there. So what are some surefire ways to ensure that your sales team and your marketing team are working together effectively?
great question.
I think, in my opinion, it goes back to the business plan that we were talking about and really starting to look at it from the sales perspective first instead of from marketing perspective. I think a lot of companies come up with all these great marketing tactics, which are great, but then they're not always tied to the sales objectives or the business objectives. So really kind of laying out what that business plan is, thinking about the growth goals, business objectives, key targets, key clients, et cetera, for the year, and then backing into the marketing tactics of how you're going to help execute those to help position your company versus the other way around, which I think a lot of people do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I can attest to that. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, back in our corporate life, I think Krystn and I saw both sides of that coin, right? In one organization, there was a whole marketing team who was going to conferences, creating thought leadership, and they were I didn't even know who worked on that team. And I was on the sales and proposal side of things. And so it was completely disconnected. We had no interface with each other. And then on the flip side, we also worked at an organization where, we would look at things in quarter chunks of period, right? Where the marketing team would say, okay, sales, what are your top 10, opportunities for the upcoming quarter? We're letting those opportunities inform the topics that we're going to be speaking on, the conferences that we're going to, what's going to be featured on our website, et cetera. And it really was a game changer once, experiencing both sides and then seeing it come together was awesome.
Yeah, I love that. Keeping the sales strategy at the forefront, building the marketing around that. I think that's great.
Yep.
That's definitely great.
So what would you guys think would be a good way for a business to create a competitive advantage in marketing, or specifically in their market or in marketing in general?
I think you have to look at what differentiates you and what, again, Megan, our marketing director, says, what's unique to you? What is important to your clients or your target clients, and what do you do different than your competitors do, or how do you create a better experience than your competitors do? And we talk a lot on the proposal side of things about win themes, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's these themes that we have in the proposal, which flow through, and they are, why we should be selected for this project, and really kind of bringing those win themes, not just at the proposal phase of procurement, but in your marketing phase as well. There are things that set us apart at Summit Strategy that we are always harping on in our marketing, about connecting sales and marketing, and having both sides of that house. And that goes towards, when you look at your business plan too, to take it back to your business plan, is what are our key messages for the year that set us apart in our market?
And then I'll say, once you identify those key messages and win themes and strategies, lean into it and go hard. Like, I think a lot of people still water down some of the messages. They go through the process to figure out what it is that their clients want, how they're serving the industry, what sets them apart from all the other firms that are out there that do what they do. But then the language on, on your website, on social, on LinkedIn, on everything, all the channels, it's still super watery and fluffy. So I think just identify those things, do the hard work to do that, and then just lean in and go hard, I guess, for lack of a better word, and own it, be proud of it, and just make sure you weave those messages constantly into every single avenue and channel and document.
Yeah, because you want that message to be cohesive, right? You don't want your
Right.
Instagram speaking about one thing and your Twitter talking about something completely different. I mean, unless you're testing to a certain extent, but
Of
you want
course.
that brand message, to remain the same. And so quick example, what would be one of like your most favorite or unique to you stories that you guys have heard? You don't have to get into specific about a brand, but what is like one approach that was unique to that brand that they took on for? Like, was it giving back, planting a tree, donating water? What was one thing that really stuck out to you guys specifically?
Good question.
Rack my brain here real quick. Okay, so I guess one, that we're working on right now, they are a healthcare IT organization. So all they do is work within healthcare organizations and help them leverage IT to provide a better patient experience. And what we really focus on, which I have a feeling we'll probably talk about later, but is their people. They are a fantastic organization. They're doing amazing things, but at the end of the day, their clients and their target clients are selecting them for these projects and to be their partner in technology because of the people that they have on their team. They've been in the healthcare industry for 30 years. They've seen, the transformation that's happened from paper records to digital records, and the transformations that continue to happen there. And so really focusing on, we are your partner. We have seen the transformation happen. We know where it's headed, and let us help you provide a better, client and patient experience in that case, by leveraging, our experience in technology.
Love that. And that just shows, that really shows the adaptation and the pivot that a company can bring to the forefront, and especially after COVID, right? We had to, going from paper to digital, that was just a massive, a massive problem that a lot of business had to overcome. So that's, being able to utilize that as leverage for your brand, or as a message is wonderful, because most businesses are still struggling to do that now, so that definitely paints a picture of we're different, because some companies are still struggling with this. I love that.
Yeah. So we can talk a little bit more about people. Do you guys think that investing in the development of your team members gives you a competitive edge?
Yes.
Yes, but I would also argue that you should do that regardless. It's kind of a baseline to me. Like, if you're not doing that, then why are you investing money to hire these people if you're not going to give them professional development opportunities to grow and help your business grow? So I don't know if that's a competitive edge, other than it just needing to happen regardless. I don't know.
It almost goes towards like company culture, right, Krystn? And I think you can talk about it from two sides of the the coin, to say that again. But from like our side as business owners in a small business, it's incredibly important that our people are, up with the latest and greatest. And when it comes to marketing and pursuit strategy tactics, and it's also important for our culture that, we're creating a culture where we are invested in our people. And we know that we are only as successful as the people that we have around us. And so like Krystn said, providing those opportunities. But then on the client side that we work with as well, it's also incredibly important because we work with primarily professional services firms. And at the end of the day, they're selling their people. They might have, a cool technology thing out here, but there's somebody in the background implementing that. And so really working with our clients to identify a part of your business planning again is who's your next up and coming star in this market, and how can we, position that individual to maybe present at a conference or write a technical paper and provide those opportunities to get their name recognition out there.
Well, and also let's think about how fierce competition is and how it gets fiercer by the day. Right. And so again, if you're not investing in your people, those people are going to leave and go to your competitors. And then you've given, if that's your competitive edge, then you've just given it to your competitors. So you've got to really own that and look out for your people and provide them support and growth.
So without giving up too much secret sauce, what is something that you guys do to help your employees excel further at what they do? What are some things that you guys help with just within your own internal employment?
I think it comes down to, I think Hayley and I have very similar management philosophies and which is why we've worked together so well for so long, is just working with everyone to set goals for the year. And I think a lot of people say like, oh, I've got goals, but there's still kind of fluffy goals. So we really go through a pretty rigorous process with all of our employees and have, I think, since we became managers many, many years ago, to set goals for that year and then to work every quarter to just touch base and talk about them. And are they on track? How can I help you as your manager to achieve these? And what do you need from me or from others in the company to make you feel like you're making an impact and moving towards your own professional development goals and personal goals, and that how those tie to the business objectives that we have overall. So I think it's a simple thing, but it's like, I still see a lot of managers and know a lot of managers that don't do that with their team. So I think it's still not quite as adopted as it probably should be, in my opinion.
Yeah. I totally agree. And so I guess that really can take us on into the next direction and ask the question of, what do you guys think is the best way to give feedback? So, because going through your goals, right? Let's say, you get your goals down for your employees, and then you go back and they haven't reached those goals, but you've provided them everything that they've needed to reach those goals. What type of feedback would you give them in that scenario?
Well, if that's the case, we wouldn't be having that conversation a year in. Like we would be having this. So the way that we do it, we set goals in the beginning of the year with everyone, and then we've got monthly check-ins where we're formally talking about those goals. It's not conversations about workload, because those happen every day. It's more intentional to set time aside each month to just touch base on those goals. And so if things get off track, we can easily identify those sooner rather than later and help them get on track and adjust as needed, because things change throughout the year. So I think it's just having that constant conversation and really making sure that if there is feedback to give, that you're giving it in real time and not waiting until the annual performance review. Because I think we've probably all been in situations where that's happened and it doesn't feel good, right? So having that real-time feedback is critical.
Because if you go for almost a full year and give them feedback, that's almost giving
that's
yourself
not fair.
feedback that you
right.
Not fair at all. So we, going kind of a little bit further, we have our monthly check-ins, but then we've also aligned our performance planning with the EOS traction philosophy. And so we have quarterly performance reviews now, which at first kind of seems like a lot, but it actually a lot can happen in 3 months, especially in a small business. And it's so important to not just have, our employees have a goal for the year, because we all know what happens when you look at a year, you lose sight and you lose track. So having them identify what their quarterly goals are is important as well.
So do you guys have, weekly meetings, like whole team weekly meetings? And then also, do y'all have, like, let's say, individual meetings as well? How does that happen? Does or does team meetings happen on a weekly basis, monthly basis? And then those individual meetings, if they happen, when do those come into play?
Yeah, so we have really two group meetings every week. One is focused on like purely tactical things on project execution, like where are you encountering road bumps on getting a project across the finish line? Do we have enough resources to accomplish all the work that we have coming down? That sort of thing. And then our second weekly meeting is with our leadership team, which there's currently 4 of us. And that's really where we talk about what our quarterly goals are as an organization, and how we're progressing towards those goals. And it's also a chance for the 4 of us to come together and identify and work through any issues that are hindering the business, whether it's, we don't have enough graphic designers right now, we have to source graphic designers. That's one that came up today. And really setting aside an hour and a half, which seems like a lot of time every single week, to talk through those issues so that they don't become these huge, snowballs and an avalanche at the end of the day, because you've gone weeks and weeks and weeks without addressing them.
Yeah, I love that. And honestly, just a little bit of feedback about us and taking that type of scenario of team meetings and individual meetings. We weren't doing that as an agency ourselves, 2 years ago, and we've really focused in on that within the last year. We dialed in on it last year, but then this year we've really tunneled in on that. Because we have team members, right? We have multiple team members, and in some cases we have dozens of contractors, right? So getting those conversations in specifically with our team members to understand how we can facilitate better with our contractors has helped us tremendously, and not only staying organized within ourselves, but also keeping our clients around longer, because organization delivers faster execution. Yeah, love that. So let's move on to a little bit of sales. I think this is a good topic for us to go into. So could you guys give us some benefits of having a well developed sales cycle?
Well, it helps you win and make money and grow the business, I think, bottom line.
Yeah, those are good.
Those are good. Yeah, those are important. I think one thing is just agreeing on what your sales process is. And I have a lot of experience with that in my previous life. And I think it's really just building what that process looks like and making sure that that process is tailorable and flexible and adaptable. What works for a $10 billion company may not work for a $1 million company or lower. So I think really understanding what are those must-have steps that have to happen every time you're chasing down an opportunity to pursue that contract or opportunity. And then what are the nice to have steps? And so that's what we've built here at Summit. We've taken the best of all the best practices out there and created our own simple 5-step process that, regardless of how big you are, how small you are, what your industry is, here are the must-have steps that we recommend you always follow to pursue work and win work.
Love that. So the development of a sales cycle, what type of programs would you guys recommend people to use in that situation? You guys recommend using, Google Drive, Monday.com, Salesforce, like what programs would y'all think?
I mean, there's lots, we've used them all. I think
we ourselves have used, HubSpot, Microsoft Dynamics, Salesforce. And I think it's less about the technology, frankly, and it's more about what Krystn was talking about, the process, and making sure that your team who's involved in sales is bought into the process. I worked at an organization who probably spent millions of dollars on a CRM system that had all the bells and whistles. It followed the corporate process, quote unquote, but nobody used it, and so then it wasn't effective, right? You couldn't see who was chasing what. So it's about like that habit and that muscle memory of just getting your team into the habit of sharing information. For a large organization, sometimes that could be a hindrance. People don't want to share certain things internally, which always just kind of seemed weird to me. And so creating that culture where you do share that information, and whether it's in Monday.com or Microsoft Dynamics or Salesforce or a spreadsheet for some of our small clients is just fine for now, because it's just building that muscle and that habit.
Yeah, and then I think it's having the conversation regularly. So one of our clients is a small business, 20 or so people. And so we've implemented a pretty simple spreadsheet for them to track their opportunities and build their pipeline. And then we have a monthly call with all of their interested parties where we go through and talk about updates and what have we learned? Has this opportunity shifted to the right? Has the client canceled it? You know, what intel have we gathered? What's our strategy? You know, and just have that conversation. Because I think sometimes if you have a tool or a system, people just think, oh, I put it in CRM, and then that's the end of that. And it's really about the conversation and leveraging each other's strengths and weaknesses on a team to, you know, because I've had lots of those meetings where it's like we're talking about one opportunity where 3 people are involved, and then someone that's not involved is like, oh, have you talked to so and so? You know, have you thought about this or whatever? And so I think just having that group discussion is really vital to moving the business forward.
Yeah. How do you guys measure the success of your sales teams and processes? I mean, those group calls are absolutely a great way. Are there any other examples you guys could give?
I mean, we definitely track win rates. So obviously
Yeah.
once the opportunity moves through the pipeline and you actually submit a proposal, especially in the government world, you know, that's a very formal, structured procurement process. And so we capture how many proposals our clients are submitting and how many they're winning. And obviously the higher, the better. So I think that's one.
I think another one too is
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say another one to kind of bounce off of what Krystn said is, you know, we talk a lot with our clients about not chasing cold RFPs, like not chasing cold opportunities that have now been advertised for all the world to see and all of your competitors to see. Instead, really building those relationships to uncover and understand what the opportunities are 6 months to a year ahead. And so I think when you look at kind of your process and your pipeline, also making sure that, you know, you're submitting and you're proposing on enough work, but that you've got long lead opportunities that you're able to really shape and craft that message and that opportunity to be the best fit for your organization.
Understood. So how do you keep your sales team motivated throughout that entire process?
I think that's part of our job as cheerleaders, you know, is to keep the motivation up and keep everyone's focused on the end goal. And what's the end goal? The end goal is to grow your business, right? And so keeping everyone focused on that fact and just bringing everything back to why we're doing this and why are we asking you, salesperson, to fill out a spreadsheet? It's so that we can track the opportunities, so that we can have our roadmap, make sure that it aligns with our business plan, and so we can win and ultimately bring revenue into the bottom line. So I think that's one element of it.
I had a sales director once say, like, if they're not motivated, then they shouldn't be in sales. And so that's probably also like looking at, do you have the right people in the right seats? Like if you have a salesperson who's losing motivation on chasing a big deal for a long time, like maybe that's a people problem. I don't know.
Yeah, because those big deals do take some time. They really do.
Oh, for sure.
And some of them, you know, they can take, you know, 1 to 2 years in some instances, you know, so
and more.
But once they, you know, but the best part about that is, you know, staying persistent on those. You really have, if it takes 1 year to 2 years to close that deal, imagine how long that client's going to stay around. Right. So like, you know, that process really helps understand, like, yes, this does take time, but this is massive. You know, this is not just, you know, a couple $1,000s a month here. You know, in some instances, it could be $1 million deals, you know, $10 million plus deals that last that long.
Yeah. I mean, sales is not for the faint of heart. I mean, I think that we've realized, at least I've realized that as a business owner now, and sales being a big part of my role and my job. And that was always, honestly, that was the thing that scared me the most about going into business. Like how I don't really like sales, because right out of college, I ended up in a sales job and it was miserable. I hated every second of it because I was like driving around Northern Virginia trying to get restaurants to buy tomatoes. Like it was a waste of, I mean, I'm simplifying, I'm simplifying a little bit, but it was terrible. I hated it. So I've always thought like, oh, I can't go into business because I have to I'll be responsible for sales, and that's not my thing. But I don't know, now it's different. I actually really love it. And the adrenaline of like chasing a deal and getting a client to hire us and choose us over all the others that do what we do, like that sort of motivation just comes naturally because I love what I do and I'm proud of it. So I think it goes back to what Hayley said, is just making sure you got the right people that are looking out for your business's best interest.
Well, so now that you've gone through that transition, that breakthrough moment, right? Because those breakdowns really do create breakthroughs, and I'm a firm believer of that. So, after those breakdowns that have brought this breakthrough for you, what is your favorite thing about sales, right? And you mentioned specifically about kind of chasing that dragon and getting people to say yes out of all of these others, right? That's a wonderful thing too. But what's another favorite thing that you have about sales now?
I think it's then watching us deliver and the client seeing why they should have invested the time and resources into hiring us and seeing it come to fruition, and just seeing, especially for our small business clients that don't have the resources in-house, often don't have the finances to hire someone as an employee. And so they look to outside consultants like us to come in and do a project, do a job, and then go on our merry way without them having to pay overhead and fringe benefits and all that good stuff. So I think it's really about delivering and then watching the light bulb turn on with our clients. And they're like, oh, this is what it's like to work with an expert and help win contracts or level up our marketing. And so I really love that, just seeing that satisfaction.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, they love it too. There's nothing more fulfilling than, a client undergoing, maybe bad relationships with, with other contracts in their days. And then they come to your table and you just blow out those other contracts out of the water, exceed their expectations. And now they're just so excited about what they have in store and what they've wanted to accomplish, but had to put those things on the back burner because, their first line of action didn't accomplish what it needed to. So they have to spend more time on that. And I think I think that's really nice to be able to bring that to the table and see that also. It's really fulfilling in saying, we're here creating a bigger picture, not just for ourselves and our brand, but for other people who may have gotten the short end of the stick whenever it comes to marketing. Because let's all be honest here, there are businesses out there that do bad blood, that draw bad blood, not just in the line of marketing, but in any business. So it is fulfilling to see that businesses can reap the rewards of good work.
Yeah, we had
that's a hurdle that we frankly have to overcome a lot, is skepticism, because there's a lot of people that claim and say that they can do X, Y, and Z. And some of our clients, it takes them a while to come around to us. That sales cycle is a little bit longer probably than it should be, because they've been burnt in the past. They had somebody that said that they could do what we said we could do, and it didn't come to fruition, and they're skeptical.
Yeah, we had a client early on that we were working on a couple of proposals with them. Hayley, this was you. And I remember you telling me that they were so surprised that like you were in the document and like making updates and changes directly in the document. And we're like, why wouldn't we do that? That's what you've hired us for, as a proposal manager, to help you write and do this proposal. But other consultants just came, they were high paying consultants that came in and just told them what to do versus actually getting their hands dirty. And I think that's something that sets us apart from some of our competition. It's like, yes, we're the high level strategy and advisory, but we're also getting in there and getting things done. I mean, I just submitted a huge 500+ page proposal this morning that I have worked hundreds of hours on myself. So it's like, we're not just the advisors, we're getting our hands in there and getting dirty.
Wow, yeah, that must take some consistency and courage to go after something that big, in doing multi-100 page proposals. That's pretty incredible. So hats off to you for that. That's awesome.
For sure. I would definitely say that you guys are a force in your industry. And I think that's awesome. And just for anybody listening, and even for ourselves, what are some ways that we can encourage and empower more women to become forces in their industries, such as you guys?
Great question. It was hard, I'm honest. Like at the beginning, we didn't know what the heck we were doing. And I mean, there's days where we still don't. And so for me, it's just providing kind of that mentorship and that sounding board for people and for other women who are looking to go out potentially on their own, and not kind of being a gatekeeper of all the answers and sharing the answers. Like, we knew nothing about, having a legal team or taxes or setting up like all of that stuff that, is on the business side. It wasn't what we, that stuff wasn't our passion, but you have to do it to start a business and to run a successful business. And not being the gatekeeper to all those answers, like sharing how you got started and how you got to where you are today, without feeling like you need to keep it all secret, and like there's so many competitors out there. Like our world is full of competitors, but we almost view each other as more like friends and colleagues, and less like competitors, and cornering off all the secrets from each other.
Yeah, I totally agree. And one thing, that I always think about whenever it comes to sharing secrets, sharing our insider information with others is fun, because we understand this information, but we also understand if we share it with you, now you have to go and execute. And knowing is one thing, but knowing doesn't mean anything unless you know how to apply it, right?
Totally.
And so that's where a lot of businesses will say, oh, well, we'll keep our stuff secret, we'll keep it secret. Well, why? Right? Your secret sauce should be the execution, not the game plan. The game plan only goes so far, right? Until you have to call an audible, and then what do you do, right? Your game plan's out the window at that point. So yeah, that's something that, a lot of marketing companies just kind of fall short of. And even with their, with proposals, right? Sometimes, companies won't want to share too much, because then that client will think, oh, well, now, we could just go do it ourselves. And I love the fact of sharing what we can do and building out that game plan, that battle plan for businesses, because then they understand, like, wow, this is quite a bit. Do I have time to do this, right? And I think that's something that puts a little bit of power in our corner to say, okay, you guys have the manpower and the hours to do this, we don't, right? And painting that picture with words and game planning is vitally important for others to see. And I don't know why marketings fall short of that and are so scared and skeptical of sharing. But it is, it's not just in marketing, it's in any industry, right?
What's that quote about rising tides lift everyone? Like, the more that you put it out there and share with others, you're only improving the industry overall, right?
Yep.
And leveling up everyone. And instead of thinking about it from this is mine, this is my only way of doing it, or my secret, or whatever. It's like, why do we have to be like that? Just get it out there. Let's make us all better, because we're all just out to do the right thing for our companies and for our clients, right? And everyone puts their own spin on it. You can share a best practice or share a tip or tool, but like you said, it's all about the execution of it and the people that are there to execute it. And I think that's makes us all better.
Yeah, totally agree. And maybe sometimes there wouldn't be as much skepticism out there for proposals and for future clients, right? If we all just uplifted each other and all did a wonderful job, right? And held up to our word.
Exactly.
Maybe these,
because frankly, there's enough work to go around. Yeah, there's plenty of work to go around.
Absolutely. There's so many industries, right? And especially if you find a business or marketing and just focus on one industry before you start impacting others, right? Just focus on one and dial in on that instead of trying to go after and hit multiple targets. Love it.
Yeah, so I think that's a great place to kind of bring things to a stop here. But if anybody listening is interested in bringing you guys on as a consulting agency, where can people find you? How can they get started?
Well, they can visit our website. Sorry. It's www.summitstrategywins.com. So that's one place to find us. And then can we share our emails or something through the wherever we post this?
Well,
I guess
you can state them if you
want.
Okay. Sure. So my name,
they're pretty easy.
Yep. So it's our first name. So my name is Krystn, Krystn, at summitstrategywins.com.
Yep. And same over here, just Hayley at summitstrategywins.com. And then you can also find us on LinkedIn, either at Summit Strategy Wins or us individually.
Awesome.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you guys so much for your time and your energy. I think you guys are very well vetted in your industry, and we really appreciate your time and advice.
Mhm.
Thanks for
for
having
having
us.
It's gonna help. Yeah, it's gonna help a lot of people back home and help people getting started, and even us. This conversation has helped us, and we've been going at this for 9+ years. So thank you so much for sharing your insight and information, and not being too too held back on sharing some of those trade secrets.
Secretive. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that about wraps it up for us. So thank you guys again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.